When we were talking about eating disorders, we absolutely have to address fear foods. Hi, my name is Stephanie. I'm a therapist on Long Island, New York that specializes in the treatment of eating disorders and body image issues. If you're interested in learning more about that or just general mental health, please click the subscribe button down below. Let's start off by defining what fear foods are. So if you have an eating disorder, you probably already know exactly what these fear foods are for you, but if you maybe are just learning about eating disorders, or maybe you're starting off with an eating disorder and you don't really recognize what this is going to be a definition for you. So fear foods typically is what a person had once enjoyed without their eating disorder, that somewhere in the process of developing an eating disorder, these foods now are associated with fear, and there's anxiety around these foods. Typically, they might have been foods that you had once binged on. They may be foods that you just really enjoy, but now they're labeled as unhealthy or bad. Because now these foods are labeled as unhealthy or bad in your eating disorder, they now are going to be labeled what we call fear foods. So these are foods that are surrounded, that if you decide to eat that it's going to be surrounded with fear and anxiety, as I had mentioned before. As with all things that make you uncomfortable, if you're not addressing and challenging this list of fear foods will grow, and it will until you decide that you're going to start challenging it and you're really recovering and working on recovery from your eating disorder. So how do you start to challenge those fear foods? Easy to say, not so easy to do, but you need to eat those fear foods. I know it sounds really scary because obviously in the name they're considered fear foods. But this is what I would suggest doing. Creating a list of all the foods that you are now labeling as fear foods. That these are the foods that your eating disorder will not allow you to eat, and it will not let you eat it without an extreme amount of anxiety. So start off just throwing everything in that you could possibly think of that are considered fear foods for you. You may not really think of it, but when you're making this list, make sure that you're putting in an all-inclusive list as much as you can. Let's say if you will eat some sort of food item from one restaurant, but you won't eat it from another restaurant, then put that, whatever that restaurant is and whatever that food is, because that is also considered a fear food, even though it might not be necessarily just like pizza or whatever. It might be pizza from a certain place for whatever reason that had developed. Just put it all down in there. Now that you have that list, what you're going to do is create a hierarchy or some way that you're going to label how these foods are in terms of how much fear it induces. So there's going to be fear foods that probably added on later on in your eating disorder that are going to probably create a little less anxiety for you because maybe you had them recently and now they're starting to become a fear food. So whatever it is, label it, list it in an order in some way that you can make sense of it. What is the most fear-inducing type of all those foods to the least fear-inducing. Maybe you want to label it 1 to 10 on a scale of anxiety, 10 being the one that's most in fear and anxiety inducing, and 1 being the least, and just create that hierarchy and then create it so that it's very visual and you could see the top of the hierarchy, which is the most fear inducing, to the bottom of the hierarchy, which is the least fear inducing. And when we are going to start challenging it, what we're going to do is start at the bottom. Start at the things that are the least fear inducing, because we need to start challenging, but we don't want to set you up for failure. We don't want to set you up for, freaking out entirely. Just something to get you started in challenging these fear foods. I would start by making your goals, setting yourself up to do at least 1 or 2 fear foods a week, reintroducing them back into your meal plan, reintroducing them back into your life. It is going to be super anxiety provoking, and that's what's so important, to make sure that you have your coping skills at the ready and that you're being proactive and that you're being reactive with those coping, making sure that you're doing as much as you can to just set yourself up for success. It will be anxiety inducing, understand that, and that's okay, but we really need to start challenging it so that it starts to become a little less anxiety inducing next time you do it. And overall, when you keep doing it, it's going to be really losing its stigma. It's going to be losing whatever it is that's going to be so anxiety inducing for you. And this is going to move you on in recovery, and it's a big part of moving you along in recovery. I hope that you found this video helpful. If you did, please give it a thumbs up. Leave a comment down below about any tips that you have to start reintroducing your fear foods back into your life. You could click my face over here to subscribe to my channel, and I wish you freedom from all fear foods on your journey to finding your state of balance. Hope to see you in my next video.